Oh, hey you. It's Kat and Steve with the Positively Midwest podcast.
Well, hello there. Now, before this next episode, let's talk about sharing our mission.
To help, we have hooked up with Anchor.fm to help us keep launching Positively Midwest to as many ears as possible. The more we expand our reach, the more lives we can help inspire.
If you haven't heard of Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Bonus, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Well, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google, and many more.
You can make money with no minimum listenership, which helps our cause.
It's everything you need to make a podcast in just one place.
So go now, download free Anchor app or go to anchorapp.fm to get started.
Now, sit back and enjoy the next episode of the Positively Midwest podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Positively Midwest. My name is Steve Jurens, and as always is my lovely wife, Catherine.
Hello, Mr. Jurens, and hello, everybody.
Hello. So I'm very excited tonight because we have a very special episode. It's not only episode 60 of Positively Midwest, but we have a new friend to the podcast, Dacota Muckey. Are you in?
I am in.
Oh.
Yeah.
In like Flint. Perfect. Okay, so I can remember back in the day when I would go to Shangri-La. Is when I first came across this gentleman named Dacota Muckey, and he was just a shirtless guy walking around playing guitar at campfires, and now you're rocking stages, and I just wanted to hear more about your story, and so I saw you on the Sugar Shack throwing out some videos, and I thought, let's see if we can track this guy down, and you were gracious enough to say yes, so thank you.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to be on. Sorry it took so long.
No, it's good. You were moving, right?
Yeah, and I'm living in the RV and no Wi-Fi, and it's been hard to just do a lot of stuff like this remotely without internet. And I tried to do one podcast outside of a coffee shop, and all the ambulances going by and everything. I just decided I'll wait until I have a proper place to do one.
Right. Well, I'm glad that tonight you were able to find a proper place. We feel special.
Yeah, man, I'm actually up in Indiana right now visiting some friends, so lucky to be able to use some of the precious Wi-Fi.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank them for us too. So it sounds like you're from Indianapolis originally. You started playing and writing music when you were about 12, and maybe just give us a little background. I know in your about section at dakotamuckey.com you get into some childhood trauma and things like that too. Do you want to give us a little background of you?
Yeah, man. So I grew up here in Indianapolis, southeast side. Went to Franklin Central High School, which was a school that was like on the news for how much I don't know what it was, but it's like a suburban, nicer school that had a lot of drug abuse, and a lot of people from my graduating class have all died from mostly heroin. There was a lot of heroin in my school. And I think I joined my first band when I was 12 years old, and they were all guys that were older than me. So, that's like when I got exposed to gigging. I was immediately playing actual shows in front of people. So that was the good part about it. But there was the darker side of like, not really darker, but ended up being darker, where it's like, I was already being offered weed all the time and alcohol, and that turned into all kinds of other things, and different pills and things like that. So at a very young age, I was exposed to a lot of those things, mostly through music, and the school that I went to was kind of just full of that kind of stuff. So kind of grew up in that scene, and it was strange though, because I feel like I did really good in school and had a job, but also like sort of had like several lives going on. But then when I was about 17, I had already played a lot of live music by the time I was 17. I was playing this show up at this club on the northeast side of Indiana, and saw this duo play, which is like a bass and drum duo that were both brothers. And I was like, holy shit, they were so good. And I was like, they're literally just missing like a guitar player and a singer. So I asked them if they want to jam sometime, and we jammed a few times, and we ended up starting a band, and we were called The Trip when I was 17 years old, and we have been in a band ever since then. So you guys were mentioning go to like Shang and stuff. I think a lot of people that were at Shang like saw me playing around and stuff, and it kind of looks more like a come up story than it really was, because it was definitely a come up at Shang, but before then, like we had still had a not like a crazy amount of success, but we'd been playing music festival circuits and around and had some pretty big opportunities as a jam band before that. And then I think kind of the medicine music sort of took over, and I got really into the Harmony Park scene, and yeah, I kind of jumped a lot of years there and whatnot, but hopefully that was somewhat of a summary.
No, yeah, that was great. So you talk a little bit in your in the About Me section, if you will, about some childhood trauma. Could you give an idea of what that kind of entailed for you and how it maybe has helped you write some music? And I know at the end of your documentary, you kind of talk about wanting to using music, in a sense, reveal your own darkness to kind of help others in need. Is that where some of that stems from for you?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was almost like a stuffed away memory. When I was, I'm not even really sure how old I was, maybe 6, 7, something like that. Feels like the right age. Our babysitter, who molested me basically for about a year. And it was like a secret. That was like an ongoing thing. Obviously I was too young to really understand what was going on. And it's the weirdest thing. And I don't know if any other people have like been molested, have similar scenarios, but like I like totally just forgot about it or like stuffed it down. I think in my early preteen years, I started to like question it. I asked my brother about it, and he was like, no, man, like that never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. This is almost like felt like a long ago, like a dream from long ago. Like I like wasn't even sure if it had happened or not. And then I like thought about it more and more, and asking my parents and stuff. It definitely happened. But so yeah, it's weird because I don't want to like play this weird victim card, because of course that had to have impacts on me, but not in ways that are super apparent or obvious. Like I'm gay as well. And so it's like, I always question like, okay, it's a female molested me. Does that have anything to do with my sexuality? And if so, does that even matter? But even with being gay and having been molested, I'd say like a lot of my problems in my life were still self-inflicted, and maybe being molested, had more to do with like my intimacy issues than I know or can understand. But I feel like whatever cards you're dealt, you just do the best you can with it. So I don't really like try to use those things. So when I talk about them, I just talk about them just to like kind of put it out there. Like I'm human, and I've had these things happen to me. And if you've had these things happen to you, it's like we can all talk about it and put it out there. We don't have to keep these demons inside of us, and we can talk about it. But I also like, I try not to like use it as a crutch or anything, because I never really like with the molesting thing. It's really weird because it took me a long time to really understand what had happened, or to try to figure out what effect it may or may not have had on me. And I was so young that even now it's just this very lost thing in my subconscious. But there's no way, like I remember being really way too young to know about sex. Like none of my friends knew what it was, and like experimenting with people and like being very sexual before like going through puberty or anything, and like knowing that wasn't normal. And so now at an older age, like being able to understand what all happened, I sort of feel in a sense like robbed of my ability to just stumble upon those things naturally, and just kind of robbed of my innocence. But lucky enough, I feel like, you know, that person was molested too. So it's like, I feel like I'm more understanding and have empathy actually for the whole course of it all, and just kind of understand that, you know, hurt people. And, you know, you can't change anything that's happened in whatever ways that it did make me who I was, you know, I wouldn't change a thing. So, yeah. And I don't really know if that has anything to do with the drugs really either. I think even with the drugs, for anybody out there who's younger than me that is kind of falling into that trap, like, I think the situation with me was like, I always felt like everybody around me was doing more and going more intense than I was. And so I always like kept that like, oh, I'm not doing what that guy does. Like, so it can't be that bad. And, you know, that's dangerous because if you surround yourself with people who are doing really bad things all the time, then it's really easy to be like, well, I'm not as bad as that guy. And, you know, we all have different thresholds, what our body can handle and stuff. And, you know, I wasn't like somebody who got really into like one drug and did it obsessively as an escape. I was more of like a partier. As like you said, you watched the documentary, like kind of like drugs of choice were like uppers. And usually I was like working like, you know, I threw this event here in Indianapolis. I would rent out a venue, and I was a talent buyer at a venue here too. And so I worked a lot of shows. So I rented out this venue for album release, and I staffed it with security myself, and I got all the permits for alcohol distribution, and months and months of work, and got the breweries in there, and got the door people there, and sound and lights, and just from ground up put a whole show together from a venue that's just a rent out venue with no staff. And so there's a lot of work. And then also I'm playing the show, so I have to keep track of who's coming in, who's coming out, who's close to the bar, who's, you know, who's supposed to be or who's not, who's got paid, who still needs to get paid. Insurance, excise comes in there, and it's like I'm really young person who's kind of running all this, and I've been there all day, and everybody's partying. So it's like part of me is in this business mindset, and the other part of me is trying to have fun. And so I'm like doing lines of cocaine in the green room, and someone hands me like a whippet, and I'm like doing the fun stuff while trying to run all this. And my brain is just like exhausted. And at about 3 a.m, everybody's left. You know, I'm the first person in that place, and I'm the last person in that place. And so it's like I had a seizure, and you know, I'd had a few seizures before that, but yeah. And then so I think that's when we're talking about trauma, I think that's where a lot of it comes from. So, and that wasn't even my last one. I hadn't really learned my lesson at that point. It took 4 seizures before I learned my lesson, which strangely enough, that I can't remember because I've been to Harmony Park so many times that Project Earth and Shangri-La all kind of blend together. But one of those Shangri-Las we played, we had to leave immediately the next day. Like we had to go play, stay the night, leave really early in the morning to get back to Indiana to play a festival that we were headlining on a Saturday. We're supposed to play at midnight. And on the way back, we got a flat tire, and we're just exhausted. Like played Shang, did Molly that night, had a great time, just partying, drinking, rolling, having fun with our friends, being young, being stupid, doing too much substances, and getting in the car and driving. And the only reason the flat tire thing matters is because it was just like, then we have to wait on the side of the road in the middle of the heat, then get our car towed, and then wait outside this shop for forever. Now we're going to be late. We're all exhausted. All we want to do is sleep. When we finally get the car on the road, we get to the festival. It's like 15 minutes after we were supposed to have started. You know, and musicians who like to play stuff like that, you pull through, you have to get your passes, you get back there, they rush you back there, and then the car gets swarmed by like people who've been at a festival for 3 days that are like already having a blast, and they're all in their like onesies, and they're like, hey man, and we're so not in that mode. Like we've just been in a car for 9 hours and we're in a total bad mood. We have to immediately get on stage. And so, yeah, that was another one where we talked about that in documentary, where it's like, how do you get in a good mood now? Like, how do you have fun? So it's like immediately start drinking, get on the stage, then you're on the high from the show, and you play at midnight. So now it's 2 a.m. when you get off stage. And partying all night. And that night was the last seizure that I'd had to date. And that was a few years ago. And yeah, so I feel like, I just feel like, I don't think the molestation and the drug use, I feel like they're kind of, I don't know, I'm not a therapist or anything, so I don't know if they're separate issues. I'm sure they're mixed in some ways, but I've definitely had my fair share of trauma, both kind of being young and robbed of innocence in some ways, but also plenty of self-inflicted trauma and lessons that just need to be learned.
Wow. Yeah, one thing that really kind of called out to me there in the beginning is you mentioned something about having empathy for the individual who did that to you, and how sometimes damaged people in a sense like that make those mistakes to others, carry it forward, and that's something that as I go through a lot of therapy, or as I learn a lot of different psychological things, that's one of the hardest things to do, is to not only like try to forgive someone because it releases that from you, but to try to almost understand and have empathy, for that person, because, in some context, they might not even, in a sense, have control over, the decisions they make. But no, I totally understand what you're saying too about, suppressing that stuff. There's a lot of times, my wife and I have been together since we were 16, and my parents were divorced at 6. And there's a lot of stuff in that time frame before she was around, and even after my wife was around, that she's witnessed and can remember, or even stories I've told her that I don't remember, that much kind of detail, and she can so much. So I think our, whatever predatorial skills or whatever you want to call it, kind of help protect us from, from ourselves, in a sense.
Yeah, I've heard that before, where it's like people who go through trauma, like women who have been abused and stuff, especially like that there's something like your brain is like, oh, we don't remember that, like does some compartmentalizing or something.
Yeah, it's our bodies have the ability to be very resilient, whether it's our mind or from drugs or alcohol. So speaking of that, when you had that seizure, then were you like rushed to the hospital? Were you all alone? Were there people with you, or?
Luckily, every time I've had a seizure, it's been a very public thing. Actually, the very first seizure I ever had was it was the round 2 of America's Got Talent. So whenever you do America's Got Talent, you like sit in these rooms forever and go through like a couple different things before you're in front of the producers. So I was actually round 2, which is like on camera in front of the producers, but not like the big, what you see on TV yet. And that was the first seizure I ever had. So I never had well, is that true? No, that's not true. That was the second. It was the second seizure. The first seizure, I was just in the car with my friend's grandma, with my bassist's grandma, because they live with their grandparents, not their parents. So yeah, no, they've always been around people. And that's like whenever after my last seizure, I got real healthy and got off a bunch of stuff and kind of changed my life a lot. And I got MRIs and EEGs and in and out of had neuroscientists looking at my brain all the time. And they had me on all these medicines, and for about a year, made me feel really weird, and I wanted to get off of them. And they were like not trying to let me get off these medicines, and trying to make me feel really bad. Like if you have a seizure while you're driving, you could kill somebody. And they had a point there, but like in my mind, this is still like on point with your question. It's like, I only ever had 4 ever, and all 4 were all like very similar scenarios that were really obvious, that were like, okay, like if I just don't do those things, I'm pretty decently sure I'm not going to have a seizure. I don't have a seizure just randomly. It's always under these circumstances where I'm up for a very long time. And it's not usually just drugs. It was never just drugs, because it's not like I'm just like doing drugs all the time. It was mostly I'm working and really stressed, like at a show or on tour, and like trying to go from one place to the other. And there's a lot of going on. There's a lot of stimulation, people trying to talk to me, and I'm staying up for too long, and I'm like taking things to get me through it. Those were always the situations when I had seizures. So now I just like don't do that anymore, and I don't have them. So that's why I was never alone. Because like I think if I was alone, I don't know if you know that much about seizures. Like I learned a lot from having them, where it's like, aside from epilepsy, everybody has the capacity to have a seizure. So everybody just has a different threshold. So if you try to stay awake for 7 days or something and had somebody next to you, and every time you try to fall asleep, they like played loud music and threw water on you and kept you awake and put up a bunch of like lights flashing and strobe lights, like eventually you will have a seizure. It's just like where your threshold lies. And my threshold happens to be lower than most people's. So that's why I felt like I was around, not to throw anybody under the bus, but like people I play music with, all my friends, like we were all doing all the same amount of substances and doing the same amount of things together. And they didn't have seizures. So I never really felt like I was doing anything abnormal or like going really crazy. Does that make sense?
Yes. And, I kind of appreciate what you said too about the prescription drugs. I always, there's a fine line there when you talk about them anyways, but hey, we have our own show. We can do what we want. But, I'm a proponent for, if you're a psychologist or your doctor says you absolutely need this, then, so be it. But I think we too quickly forget that our bodies are made, they're machines to make us healthier. And if we put the right fuel in it, you're going to get the right, whatever, it's going to work properly for you. So, is that something that you have also changed? Do you have any kind of a health regimen or any of that kind of that natural, modern hippie stuff that we should probably get back to, but instead we're shoving the greasy burgers in our guts?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm obsessed. I was like a little like that beforehand. I think, I've had my chapters in my life, but yeah, I mean, I take hella vitamins and supplements, and I eat really, really clean, and I go to the gym for 2 hours a day, and I'm running my first marathon in November, so I'm very into fitness, very into nutrition, and also like sleep. And honestly, those seizures, like they teach you a lot going in those places. It's like whenever they do an EEG properly on somebody who has seizures, they'll do an overnight sleep thing. And sometimes they'll even try to induce a seizure, which I went through, which was honestly traumatic, because when I talked about like keeping you awake and playing loud music and having strobe lights, they do that to you. Like in a clinical setting, you go in this room and they like torture you with sound and lights and don't let you sleep with all these electrodes on your brain to try to induce a seizure. But like, what they're trying to do, but it still sucks. And they just kind of read what your brain's doing while all that's going on. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I just learned a lot, like sleep really, really matters. Now, like, let's say I was at Shang, and then we had another show after, like, I wouldn't stay up all night. Like, I would, even if I was, because I think certain substances have their place. Like, if I wanted to, like, do some psilocybin or something, like, I'd be way more planned about it. And then at the end of the night, I think I used to have, like, a lot of fear of missing out. I'm just more likely to just go to bed. But yeah, sorry, drifting away from your question. I definitely take health a lot more seriously. And yeah, it was a little frustrating. Like when you go for having those seizures and you tell them, cause I was worried. I was like worried I was going to keep having seizures. I never knew when one was going to happen. Seizures are pretty traumatic. I'd wake up, from being unconscious. You don't feel yourself having a seizure. Just all of a sudden you're walking and people are holding you and you're like, what is up? It takes you so long to figure out what's going on. You like bite your tongue open. There's blood all over you. And from like biting your tongue open, everything on your body is sore from tensing up and shaking. This is really scary. And to go to somebody and just have them like take this pill. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you be like, all right, you need to quit doing drugs. You need to drink more water. You need to get better sleep. Don't stay up for this long. And you're probably not going to have any more seizures. Like that just seems like the more obvious thing. So Yeah. And they never once said anything like that. They were just kind of just assume that you're going to keep having your unhealthy lifestyle and that you should take these pills.
Yeah, I think we run into that a lot, that especially in the Midwest, one of our little missions is to break down different stigmas. And as far as medication goes, modern medicine is very powerful. However, this I'm kind of a fan of the root, like functional root, medicine, and finding, what's actually causing this, like a dramatic thing is that diabetes wasn't even around until like the 50s and 60s. And now you can barely find water that doesn't have a pound of sugar in it, to be silly. But so no, that's great. So another evolved mission, if you will, for what I want out of this show is I do like to highlight different bands and music and stuff, just because I've always been a huge music buff anyways. And you perfectly mentioned it earlier when you mentioned medicine music. And that's kind of the first time I had heard that was in the Harmony Park area. And when I started going to that, that could be a chapter in my life, if you will, where I don't know if I was lost, but I've always had this sense of trying to find myself in the world and what am I here to do? And, I thought being a modern hippie was the way to go. So I grew my hair out after I went to a festival and yada, yada. But that's kind of groomed itself now. But what I'm getting at is medicine music. That's where I first heard that. And could you give me your synopsis of what that means to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably something I've actually struggled with since getting into the scene, is the definition of that, or what does my music have to be medicine music, or is medicine music all positive? Man, I don't know. I think medicine music is just like, there's probably no one definition. I think it's anything that's real and vulnerable and it just has no like cookie cutter bullshit attached to it. So it doesn't have to be like Harmony Park scene stuff. I've listened to Billie Eilish and had like songs that I would turn up in my car and like tear up. They're just like so deep and real. And I mean, even like old school Eminem, I just think if anybody is just like revealing their soul to you, and it can be dark, it could be the demons inside, just talking about all the dark. Like we just came out with a song that's very dark. It's called I'm Fucked Up Inside. But, because if somebody can listen to that and be like, goodness, like it feels so good to know that I'm not alone. Like I also have these really crazy fucked up thoughts, and like I have this darkness inside of me, and like, Trevor Hall calls it the fruitful darkness. And, but I love that he puts a positive spin on it. And Trevor Hall's easily one of my most favorite artists. But, I like that with our song. I was like actively trying to not put a positive spin on everything, because I felt myself drawn to do that in the name of medicine music. But, I just think medicine music is anything that's real. So like it might be easier to say what I think isn't medicine music, which would just be like, there's music that you just put on because it's a party, or like just like when I'm at the gym or something, it's like shorty got them apple bottom jeans boots with the it's like whatever, it's like catchy music with a beat, and it's not really talking about anything serious, and it's like club music. Like that's not medicine music. You know what I mean? Like everything has its place, but where you can just tell an artist is just like revealing their soul to you. That's the way I like to put it, because I don't really like to think that like medicine music has to be this super positive sunshine rainbows sort of feel. I feel like do you guys know that song? Do you guys Trevor Hall fans?
Yeah.
So do you guys see when he came out with Fire on Your House? Like kind of surprised everybody, and I was like, man, this is so dark and it kind of scares me. Yeah. I am the person, like I loved that. I was like, yes, Trevor, like yeah, like let it all out, because like that's medicine too, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in like any kind of therapy that you pursue in your life, whether it's music or it's poems or whatever that means for you, you get what you take out of it. You know, like our group is, you know, we're around 1,800 people in our group now, and we got a regular page too, but we share the same on both. And a lot of it is picture quotes. And at first I thought, man, these are really cliche, just posting, you know, other people's thoughts. But then there was times where I'd share something that was relevant to me or how I was feeling at that moment. And then we started to get messages from people like, oh, thanks. And I just got one before we kicked this off was, thanks, I really needed this today. And, you know, like it might not have meant something to me or to however many people, but to them, that's what they needed to hear. And I think with your music and a lot of other music, I've fallen into the TikTok. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but mainly because we have a 13-year-old daughter so I had to learn about it, but now I'm kind of sucked into some. And just recently, somebody shared Jimi Eat World, one of their first songs in the middle. And I think I've sang it a bunch, but I never really realized how those lyrics are talking about being left out and, you know, how it, you know, takes some time and, you know, you got to kind of pick yourself up and stay positive. And that was just a song that we drank beers to and, you know, partied with back in high school and whatnot. So I think you're really onto something there too.
You know, when it comes to the, you know, constant positivity, like you were talking about, there's a trait called toxic positivity that we learned about from a local psychologist. And that's like forcing the positivity, like instead of just being real and being like, okay, now we are going through this. It's not about just forcing the positivity. It's like, now how can you overcome? Feel your feelings, know that you're not alone, and now overcome that obstacle in life to hit your next greater destination. And that's kind of like what you were talking about with, you know, your past, you know, it's a part of you, but you're not letting it define you. You don't want to use that as your crutch. But it's like you took those things, even from being 12 years old and in those teens. I can't imagine my kids being in that, you know, section of life and just using it to create your own path of where you wanted to go and how you wanted to overcome some of those things that you did, you know, experience at those younger ages. So it's not always just that toxic positivity, but it's finding the, you know, the raw and the real of it, while then understanding how to not stay in that downer spot. And that's what any form of music can do. That's where I feel like a lot of it can be medicine, because it's can match your feelings, but it can help bring you out of a darkness as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's like, it's just like, what is positivity defined by, you know? Because I feel like if you go to a therapist like with a phobia and you're like terrified of spiders and you're like, I just, you know, what I want out of these sessions is to not be so terrified of spiders. Well, like the one thing they're not going to do is be like, all right, well, let's not talk about spiders at all, and let's just focus on all these other things. Like, the only way that you're going to confront your fear with a spider is like they'll put like a spider in the corner of the room. They'll talk you through your feelings. How are you feeling about that spider? Like, just focus on your breath, you know, and eventually, hopefully out of like 12, however many sessions, I don't know, this is such a random thing, but you know, eventually the spider's crawling on your arm, you know what I mean? So I try to like use that analogy a lot. It's like whenever you think like, oh, I'm really anxious in crowds, and just, it's bad to just be like, that's a character trait. I'm anxious in crowds. I'm just going to have to live with that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I feel like the positivity comes in and like thinking like, no, like I can face my demons and like, I want to talk about my darkness and conquer it and like slowly put myself in uncomfortable situations that like create like neural links in the brain to like tell myself like, hey, we don't get to just hide from this thing. I don't know if that has anything to do with what we're talking about, but it's just like, I feel like, talk about like positivity and Positively Midwest, like your guys' podcast. Like, I just think that positivity in itself is like a nuanced idea. It's not like ignoring the bad. It's like conquering it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that is something that we talk about quite often too, is that, first off, I started getting it because everybody would be like, oh, you're not being Mr. Positive. You got to be positive. And it's like, well, here's the deal, guys. Like there's real life out there. I'm not going to run around and do a podcast and share stuff in our group that's just saying you always have to walk around with a smile no matter what happens. But positivity is like trying to find the good in a bad situation, but there's so many different aspects to it. Like, one of my favorite little quotes is, don't make a permanent decision because you're temporarily upset. You never know what your actions are. So if you had a really bad day at work, back in the day, for me, it was, start texting my buddy, I'm having a bad day. And then when I get home, I already had it planned out to sit out in the garage and drink a bunch of beers until I got so drunk and went to bed. And then, all of a sudden everything's fixed. But, who was I actually hurting? I was hurting my family by not hanging out with them. I was hurting with my wife by who knows what, I can't even remember this type of stuff I said to her or did or whatever. And, it's like you have to learn how to feel the feelings, but work through them. And then you have a positive life because you understand what gratitude is. You understand what, when it's time for me, okay, I have to be sad. I need to step away from, this situation, these people, do what I do, that whatever you need to do that grounds you. And then you will process those feelings and then, go back to having some sort of positivity, but it's, sure as hell not being positive all the time and faking your way through that shit either. It's got to be, sometimes you just got to be sad and you got to be pissed.
Yeah, of course. And like, like in mindful meditation practice, like all the practice I've done, I've never, aside from like metta loving kindness, like specific meditations where you're really trying to like cultivate that feeling. Like it's always like every time I've done a mindfulness meditation, all of the different settings I've ever done it, it's always like, okay, let's just check in with how you're feeling right now. Like, are you feeling tired? Maybe you're a little anxious about the day. Let's try to just watch that feeling, recognize it, and like, that's the kind of things they're saying. They're not saying to ignore it or think something else. And I think that's beautiful because like, that's what really helps. Like if you have a problem with like lashing out with anger in the middle of the day, it doesn't help to just be told to be happy, but it like maybe to step back, look at that anger, kind of see where it comes from. And yeah, and just like a nuanced perspective on feelings and stuff. And I think a lot of the problems with like, a very highly anxious, depressed society just comes from like, we're mostly like, we're working these crazy hours at these jobs that don't have like a lot of passion for us. And then we go home and we're exhausted. And when you're exhausted, you're easily distracted. And we're in a society that's like full of distractions. And so, yeah. And then the distractions that you have are like comparing you to other people. And there's like all these other advertisements that are seeping their way into your subconscious. And like, we're just like perpetually anxious and depressed. Whereas like, that's what I love about the Harmony Park community and like podcasts like this and stuff, like people that are talking this way. But, speaking of the Midwest, like being in Indiana and meeting a lot of people who don't have experiences like that, you start to realize that there are lots of people on the earth who don't ever take time to like check in with themselves and don't, and in their defense, like don't even have the time to, and aren't exposed to the right things in life to kind of urge them that way, where it's just like, why do I believe the things I believe? And like, who am I really? And like, what really matters to me in this life? And like, consider, I would say like considering like the people you love the most, and people like your parents are going to die, and your friends might die, and that you're going to die, and thinking about death as a way to like really have gratitude for life and think about it more seriously. And I just feel like, there's not a lot of opportunities in like this really intense, fast-paced world to like stop and just kind of ground yourself in those ideas. And yeah, I don't know.
No, that was great. Cause that is kind of how we're, conditioned, if you will. I think that, I've been doing some book learning, recently. And, one of these courses that I was looking into, they talked about, this generational, how we all change, well, everything's constantly has to have a label in today's society. So you got your boomers and you've got, your Gen Zs and your X's and your millennials and all that crap. But really what I've found really interesting, because it's not too much of a difference. So I'm 36, and then, your millennials most of the time are in their mid to late 20s. And people, like the older generation, they always talk about how, they're maybe lazy, or they don't have any loyalty, or they don't want to work and make money. And this study was that people in my generation that graduated in the 2000 area, and I can attest to this, it was always, if you went to your guidance counselor, or you went to a recruiter, or they had the job career days, it was always like, okay, if you go to college and do this, you can make this much money. If you do this, you can make this much money. And the whole philosophy wrapped around it was about how much money you would make coming out of college. Not, hey, you seem like you're really good because we just did a personality assessment on you. And we understand, though, in your life, your personalities will change. But we think that you're more closely related to being a counselor or being a musician or whatever, instead of, oh shit, you should go sell computers or work on computers because computers are the future and you're going to make millions of dollars. Well, what's happened is, some of the parents that maybe are in their 50s, they're not too far from our age either. So they're the ones who had some of these kids, and they say, well, geez, I went to college and I got to party and stuff, but I don't have a job that even, I went to school for. So these kids pick up on this stuff and they're like, why should I do that? I want to go and experience life, and I want to go and maybe I work here for 2-3 years and maybe I move somewhere, and so to some of the majority of the world, they look at maybe even someone like you that's traveled around and is living in an RV and playing music at different places, to keep moving through life. Like, oh my gosh, how can that guy stand doing that? And I've got to get up at 7:30 every morning and take my shower and have my granola and blah blah blah. So I rambled a little bit there, but to me, it's kind of saying that society continues to try to condition us, but I'm proud of people like you that break whatever norm might be out there, and you follow this sense of a dream, but it could be real life for anybody that really wants to take the chance.
Yeah, and I also, I'll say, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a 9-to-5 job. I to put things in context, a year ago, what is it, February? I guess I was in Hawaii a year ago, a little over a year ago. I was working construction. I was working on skyscrapers with my dad, like roped off high in the sky, doing hardcore construction work in the middle of winter in Indiana, being up at like 6 a.m. I worked construction for 5 years. While touring, I would request off like a week or two for a tour. We would have gigs Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'd take like Friday off work. They would always work with me. I think it's important for me to say that so people don't just think like, wow, like, man, I don't understand. Like, I definitely did my fair share of that. But yeah, I think, I for me, like, I'm somebody who I just like to just dive into the fire. I feel like I have tattoos on my fingers. And when I got those, it was just kind of a promise to myself that I didn't want a shitty job. So I would make a permanent decision that would help me to not get, like, it's harder to get hired at places, and it looks cool when I play guitar. So,
I hear you there. I have like a guitar tree type tattoo on my left forearm, and now I see that Shawn Mendes has one too, but I totally got it before him, so I'm cooler. But I love when I'm playing guitar. That's strategically why I got it. So when I'm using my left hand on the strings, then I can see that the whole time. So anyways, little tidbit. But I appreciate that you also said that the 9 to 5, because I mean, I wasn't knocking that either. That's what I've done ever since I was 12. I think I've had a job like that, but just more an observation that, you know, the Midwest is quite a bit traditional. And those are some of the small little barriers we want to help break down, whether it's through therapy or mental awareness or, you know, drug addiction or you just problems, sometimes normalizing problems and knowing that you're not alone in the world. And so if you are that person who's sitting there and maybe you're debating whether or not you should go to college, or you're debating whether or not you should travel, or maybe you're 45 years old. I mean, just never forget that if you're not hurting anyone, you're not hurting your family, you still have the ability to take that leap, to make that decision if you'd like.
Yeah. And I mean, if anyone's listening that's considering any leap of faith, I say take all of them. I learned, you know, I did music for a long time but you know, I think like everything looks glorified on the internet. So it's like, things weren't always like as special as they seemed. But whenever I first went to Hawaii, which was 3 years ago, it was February 2019. There was this Flow Fest. Uncle Joe was like, yo, dude, you should play this Flow Fest thing. And like, it doesn't pay any money. And also you have to fly to Hawaii and I don't have anywhere for you to stay, but you should play it. I was like, damn, well, that's kind of scary. Like, and I had got my plane ticket, kind of without thinking about it, kind of far in advance. And when it got closer and closer, I was like, oh my God, like, I don't know. Like, I have a plane ticket and I have a slot at this festival, but like, I don't know where I'm going to stay while I'm there. I don't have a ride anywhere. I'm not going to have a car. I don't even know how to get my guitar onto a plane. I've never flown with my pedal board and my guitar. How am I going to get my stuff over there? Like, so many things. Like, what am I going to do? Like, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to lose tons of money. I don't have the money to do this. And I called both Uncle Joe and Chris Berry. Chris Berry is the one who throws Flow Fest, sort of, with JoJo does a lot of the booking. But anyways, I can still never, this day, I've told this story a few times, but I can never remember if it was Chris or JoJo who was like, they were like, look, man, you know, it is going to cost a lot of money. It is, you don't know where we're going to stay. It is kind of a lot. So you do whatever, you know, you're not going to hurt our feelings if you don't play the festival, but just know, just like, if you do come, you definitely are not going to regret it. And it's going to be one of the best times of your life. And you might only regret it if that week that you would have been playing that festival in Hawaii, you're at work instead. I was like, damn it. So I went, and the festival had a ride set up from the airport to the festival for me. And that was it. That was my only like in. So got to the festival. And when I was on stage, I was like, guys, I don't really know anybody. And, you know, so I'm looking for someone to stay. And this lady named Auntie Kalia came to the, where I was selling merch after my show. And she said, hey, Reed Grimm's staying with me. You can stay with me, like your family. And you have Reed take you to my house when this is all over. And I went there and I stayed in Hawaii for a month, and I hitchhiked all over the island. And I had an absolute blast. And I've every time I go to Hawaii ever since then, I stay with Kalia, the same person. She's a good friend of mine now. And so was Reed. But while I was there, I got, you know, I was just like, I wanted to remember that the next time that I was considering not doing something that I was super anxious about all the logistics for and the money and, oh man, I can't really do this. This isn't the right time. This is irresponsible for something that could be the experience of a lifetime. I wanted to remember to never even, obviously I made the right decision, but I remember I don't even want to deliberate anymore. I want to be the person who just does the things. So I got a tattoo on my hip. It says, be fearless and play. Wookie foot. And yeah, I mean, I don't always stick to it, true to it, but honestly, like, since that, like, I'd say that going to Hawaii, having that experience changed me forever. Like, I have all these people in my life that have all these grand plans. Like, look, I got to pay off my car, and then I got to save up this much money, and then I'm going to quit this job I hate. I'm going to quit doing all this stuff I hate, and then I'm going to go finally do these things I've always wanted to do. And I'm just like, fuck that. Like, you could die tomorrow. Like, you're a movie. Like, you're the main actor in your own movie. Like, does the actor wait that long? Like, no. Like, just I get it, like being logistic or whatever. I'm not telling people to like be homeless by making some crazy decision, but like I'm a big fan of like you can over plan to the point that you're kind of just, you know, giving yourself excuses to not do something. Like I I'm broke. Like I don't have a lot of money. I live in RV. I live very humbly, and like I just kind of realized like you can decide to just do whatever you want to do and make it work. And like, you know, I still have to pay my bills. I still have to work and do things I don't want to do. But I think it's just like a science of like minimizing the bullshit and maximizing like, you know, the times that I get to wake up in the morning on my natural rhythm without an alarm clock going off, meditating, like reading my favorite book for a while, and like going to the gym and having like more days like that to myself than not.
Well, that was quite beautiful. Thank you for that. It really was, because I think the whole time I'm thinking, you know, that was kind of a bigger decision to go and, you know, fly over to Hawaii and do all that stuff. But people do that hee-haw or that ping pong and back and forth over the smallest things, like what toothpaste they should buy, or, you know, like whatever, you know, going through a grocery store. And I know you get behind those people and they're staring at all the boxes of Hamburger Helper or whatever the hell it is. And they're standing there for like 20 minutes and it's like, holy shit, will you just grab one of the boxes? I know I want that cheeseburger stuff. Let's move on.
Yeah.
That was a crude example, and not healthy, but however, it's, you know, it's a testament, because people are always, maybe we're conditioned that way too, or we're so hesitant. Like, well, first you have to, and this was part of my problem maybe earlier, but you know, you have to get a partner, and then you have to get married, and then you have kids. And then the whole time you're working your ass off, and then you got to send them to college, and then you got to buy them a car or whatever the hell else. You know, it's kind of like this prefabricated plan that you're on. But all too often we forget that we're allowed to change that son of a bitch whenever we want to.
Yeah, and it's weird. I mean, I don't know. I try not to think like too. I don't know if grandiose is the right word, but I try not to like zoom out too much, and especially get into like any conspiracy theories or whatever. But it does sort of seem like society's set up in a way where it's like they really don't want everybody thinking for themselves and thinking that they can just follow their own life paths, even though like it's pretty obvious that, you know, whatever makes you happy, you can just go do it and figure it out and live within your means, make shit happen. But like there's gotta be people who work all these jobs and who are consumers who are too exhausted to think about doing other things. And then they like scroll through Instagram and Facebook and they see ads for this stuff. They get on Amazon and they buy random shit. And I do all those things. So I'm not like shitting on anybody. I just bought something on Amazon before this podcast, but yeah, like I do. It does sort of seem like it's fabricated that way sometimes, because if you start to really pay attention, and if you like listen to a lot of podcasts where like Dax Shepard does Armchair Expert, obviously Joe Rogan and stuff, and like there's certain sections of these where these very successful actors, comedians, musicians are talking about their come up stories. It's like there's one thing in common with all of them. They all refused to accept that narrative and took a leap of faith and moved to some city or did something crazy, and just like with all of their might was like, no, like this is what I'm going to do. I'm doing it. Like there's no other way. And I feel like that's what it takes. And it doesn't have to be super intense. Like, you know, you don't do like eating like out of trash cans or anything. Like there's a way you can still like DoorDash and Uber Eats and like kind of like, you know, have some money and but then still do what you want. Make sure you don't eat out too much. Like here's some sort of like financial plan with it all. But I don't know where I'm going with that. But we live in like a hardcore consumeristic society. Like when I'm around my friends who make a lot of money, they all spend a lot of money. Mm-hmm. It's just like so obvious to me. It's like every time we go out, they always want like the extra things, like the extra cheese and the extra drink. And like, I don't stop at gas, you know, you just, it's the whole like more money, more problems. So,
yep.
You and a lot of those Harmony Park musicians, man, I don't know all of them personally, but a lot of them that I do know, it's like, man, they're all very, very happy, not a lot of money, so people who look up to them should understand that's not where it comes from. You live within your means, and you figure out like what you want in your life, and you just have that. You don't really need a lot more.
Beautiful. Yet again. So sometimes I think you just have to believe in yourself, or maybe believe in something, which is a what we call a segue in the biz.
Nice.
And so I want to play this little snippet from one of your songs, Believe in Something, and then just a quick little 30-second. Then I want you to maybe give us a little background on that, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
All right. Then something fell on the dog kennel behind us.
I was like, I don't remember that part of the song.
Yeah. All of a sudden, well, you never know what's going to happen here in the raw organic office of Positively Midwest. Excuse me. But yeah, tell us about that beautiful little sample that was ruined by whatever that was.
Yeah, Believe in Something, man. It's actually a really old song. So anybody who, I feel like a lot of the Harmony Park people don't know that it's like the band had this career called The Trip, just The Trip, no Dacota Muckey. And I didn't have any music out. And it was like a jam band. And Believe in Something was the most popular song. We had a music video for that when I was 17 years old. Way old song. But then I came out with a solo record under just my name, which was way more acoustic, lyrically driven music. That got signed by an independent record label and did way better. And then when I joined the Harmony Park stuff, it was all like under Dacota Muckey. And then the band joined me, so it was kind of confusing. So then we called it Dacota Muckey and The Trip. But anyways, all that sums up to we re-released Believe in Something under the name Dacota Muckey later. So it's way older than a lot of people realize. It's like from my teenage years. But that being said, yeah, I mean, the story behind it's just like, I used to go to my grandparents in the summers when I was a kid, when I was a preteen, teenager. And they went to a lot of churches and stuff. And I was very involved in the church community. I played, I didn't lead worship, but I was part of like the worship team playing music. And I was just like one of those kids. Like I was in church like 3 or 4 days a week, not just on Sunday, practicing, like helping fix things, doing things around the church. And like the pastor would come over to my grandparents to eat. I'll wake up in the morning, drink coffee with my grandpa, and we would talk about the Bible. And I was like very, very curious about religion, but mostly like philosophically and like trying to like wrap my head around all this stuff. The older I got and becoming a teenager and stuff, and kind of drifted away from like the Christian views and got really into like Buddhism and started visiting a monastery and started like, what is all this about? And, reading a lot of Buddhist philosophy and books and trying to just understand all of it. But, of course, like once you start thinking for yourself and like trying to figure out what you believe, I think that the main story is like, it's like, man, like I'm not saying I don't believe in Christianity, but like, can I have like a while to like decide that I do? Because I just sort of feel like, now I'll say pretty bluntly that I don't believe in it, but like at that point in time when I was exploring my beliefs, you get, it's almost like being in a cult where you get told like you're like a sinner, you're not even allowed to doubt it. And yeah, I just had a lot of frustration. And then I think one of the lyrics in the song is like, like convincing myself that there's an answer to life. So it's like, yeah, I just think that, no, I'm young. I'm only 24. So I got a lot of life to live, and I don't know when I'm going to end up believing. But when I was really young, I was reading a Christian book, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but I remember this Christian being on a plane next to this atheist, and them talking, and the guy being like, well, at least you believe in something, because, studies show that people who have faith in anything are generally always more happy. And then the Christian goes on to explain, like, that is actually completely true scientifically, that all of the like controlled studies they've done, people who have a belief system in some sort of religion are generally happier than people who don't. But then he goes on to make his case why it still matters that has to be a Christian God. Mm-hmm. I remember that sticking with me. I was like, is that really true? Like, holy shit. Like, so it almost, according to all these studies they've done, it doesn't really, not to say it doesn't matter, but at least from, an agnostic's perspective, it doesn't really matter what you believe in. It's just like having faith that there's a greater good and things are going to work out for whatever reason you believe in it. There's something higher than yourself in this world, which greatly improves your happiness. And so when I wrote that song kind of out of frustration, it was like that like, the verses I think are like frustrated me. And the chorus is like, still believe in something, but like, just like, let it be love, man. So it's like kind of cliche, but that's basically the story behind it.
Well, no, thank you. I that resonates with me too. It's kind of why I picked one of those, as I've been jamming you for a bit. But, I went to a private school when I was younger, and I was somewhere in 4th grade, and it was a Christian school, and great school, great friends. I still know some of the people from today, so it's not about that. But for me at that time, that's like my mom told me, you're out of control. I can't deal with you, so I'm going to send you to a Christian school, and they're gonna change you. So in the beginning, God or religion to me, especially denominational religion, was like a punishment, and I didn't want anything to do, with any of that, and it gave a distaste for a lot of religion to me, and it's still something I probably struggle with now, but, I think that, even if it's something spiritual, you don't have to. There's this thing with labels. I'm kind of on a kick on, and maybe society has been for a while. It's at least coming up more in conversations, but I don't know why you have to necessarily label that, or, if you just believe in being a good person and giving back, and if that's a Christian or if it's whatever denomination it is, there's a lot of good things that some of those do teach. Some of the basics are still there, the gratitude and the spreading the love and taking care of one another, and those things are great. Obviously, if you're in a situation where religion is telling you to, kill people, that's probably not something you should be doing, but that's a dramatic example. So no, I think you covered it great, and it kind of sparked that in me where spirituality is something that I kind of struggled with a little bit, but I realized that it stems from, poor childhood experiences and maybe not being, educated the right way on some of it. So I think if you find your own way, and there has to be something said where, you can walk into a room and you gravitate towards certain people, or you feel certain connections with certain people, that all is some sort of universal, something there is working, and it doesn't matter how tough of a person you are, everybody cries at some point, or, no matter how, whatever, uber religious or whatever, you're still going to get super pissed about something, and even depressed at times. So, yeah, thank you. That really sparked my, I could probably go on forever, but I won't, because I want to move on to this other song, Gypsy. And that's got a special meaning because it's one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs. That's not what you covered, by the way, but that's one of my favorite songs. Our dog, our first dog we ever got, I think 18 years ago now, or 17 years ago now. We had to put her down a few years ago. My kids thought I was broken because I was bawling so much. So You did this one on Sugar Shack too, not too long ago, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so I got the album version here, but I just want to flip that on for a second and then have you give me a little rundown of that, if that's cool.
Uh-huh, sure.
All right.
I wrote the songs about when you didn't care. I wrote the songs about when you were never there. I wrote the songs about all the good times we shared. My life was dark, so I wrote the pain away.
All right, proceed with your explanation, sir.
Nice. It's so weird to listen to super young me, believe it or not. I don't listen to those very often.
Oh, I love that. That guitar riff, by the way, is phenomenal.
Oh, dude, thanks, man. Yeah. Shoot, I'll vividly remember the exact day writing that. It was like me and Jake and Riley, the guys in the band, the brothers. We were up north at this studio. And they were doing like some bass and drum tracking. Anybody who's been in the recording studio knows it's like there's a lot of times where, like, let's say if they're like only focusing on bass and drums, I would have nothing to do for like 3 or 4 hours. And so it was one of those moments, and hell, I was probably like 19 or something. And I grabbed like a couple beers and took like this tape recorder to this other room and just wrote the song like all at once. Yeah, I think when I wrote, I guess I always have these chapters in my life that I kind of forget about. Like whenever I was I guess I was graduating, so I was a senior in high school. I dropped out of high school. I was kind of doing a lot of drugs, but also like I had fallen in love with a man and figured out I was gay. And then me and that guy broke up, and it was like the first big, person I loved, and it felt like the end of the world. Not only was everybody figuring out that I was gay, also like this person I loved enough for it to not matter, didn't love me back. And then also my parents were finding out. Me and my dad, it had like, there's so much stuff going on where it's like my dad owned a roofing business and had a lot of money, and then the economy crashed, and so our whole family lost the house and all the cars, and I'm being like this crazy child who's getting in all this trouble, and I'm fighting with my dad, and I got in this big fight one day, and I left, and I was like, never coming back, and he was like, you'll be back, and I never came back, and I didn't talk to my parents for years, and I had a period of my life, about a year, where like I just like walked around with my backpack on. I like stay at different friends' houses, sleep on couches. Like I wasn't homeless, but I was definitely like a couch surfer. And so in a sense, I guess maybe that's what I thought the word gypsy meant. Like I felt like I was just this gypsy, just kind of roaming around and doing whatever. And some of those lyrics are about the person at the time. They were about the person I'd broken up with. Some of them were kind of about my parents. Mostly it was just kind of like when I'm saying I wrote the songs about when you didn't care and when you were never there. It's kind of just me being heartbroken for the first time with a relationship. And but all the like coarse lyrics where it's like in every gypsy lies a home, even when I'm lonely I know I'm not alone. I have a tendency of like writing songs when I'm sad that are like they're like letters to myself. Like this is the music that heals your soul is a lot like that. Like it's like you're sad, but you think you're lonely and you spend all your time looking for something. It's a lot of like your second person. So it's like Gypsies was kind of just like a letter to myself, kind of like a making myself feel better sort of song. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of just that period of my life where I was just floating around, and I remember I hadn't talked to my parents in years and years and years. And I don't know if I talked to my mom that night. Like just like tons of crazy stories in my life that I just forget about most of them because they just all kind of blur together. It's like I was working at an Arby's, and for like 4 months or something, I lived with my manager who worked there for a little bit. I maybe only lived there for like 2 months, and she was like gone. Her kids were there, and like this guy she was seeing was like cooking crack and stuff while she was gone. And, like, I told her about it, and then he was like, "Did you tell her this and that?" And then like this grown man, like 35, 36 years old, and I was like a 19-year-old kid, just beat the shit out of me. And I remember like walking out of there, like having my backpack and like sleeping outside and like, you know, like black eyes and stuff. And that was like a week before we had that studio session. So it's like in the midst of like playing shows and like recording music, I had this like crazy, like staying in different places for months and sleeping outside and like doing all this crazy shit. And so I think that song was like just me just kind of letting it all out, like, damn, like, fuck, like I need some stability. And like, you know, I don't think I really believed those lyrics when I wrote them either, but yeah, it's weird to sing songs like that now when you're older, because it's like it means a different thing now than it did then.
That was perfect, because that's what I was going to ask next was, you know, when you do sing something like that now, you know, does that meaning change? Or, you know, you always, especially when you can go on YouTube and watch you on the Sugar Shack sessions, like you're very emotional with your body language when you're singing and when you're playing. And people that probably don't play instruments, especially like guitar or, you know, piano or whatever, those kinds of personal instruments, in my opinion, you know, you, after your muscle memory and stuff is there, like it becomes an extension in a sense of who you are. So when you're making those guitar faces or you're emotionally singing, getting vibrato or whatever out, you know, that's like pure raw emotion. And even watching you, I mean, this video didn't come out too long ago, and so now I didn't know this song goes back that far, honestly. And in the video, you sing it just with a shit ton of passion, to be vulgar.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I want to say that I probably mostly performed that way. So I don't think like there was anything like specific about that performance. Like that's just kind of been like kind of the way I always do it. And honestly, I have a vocal coach now, and like it's kind of a problem because it's like there are times to hold back and kind of restrain my voice from being totally exasperated at like some bar restaurant show. Mm-hmm. But even like if I'm playing for like 6 people in a bar, usually just like in that space, no matter where I'm at. So it's hard for me to not do that. Cause I'm just like, I can't like play music and just like play it and not like go to that space. But yeah, I mean, Sugar Shack was special in a sense where it's like, you know, it's hard not to be consciously aware that there's, you know, 5 people with these giant cameras walking around you, and that like I'm not in a band, it's just me. So all the angles they're getting, like everything I do with my fingers, everything on my face, like it's going to be like in high definition. Thousands of people are going to see it. So it's like, I'd be lying if I weren't saying like I was hyper aware of all that happening. And like, there was this voice in my head that was like, just give it all you got. Like, you know what I mean? So I definitely was a little fired up going into it, maybe even a little nervous.
Well, you absolutely killed it. So I enjoyed watching those. And once I knew we were getting close to it, some buddies and I get together and we jam on Wednesdays. And so I had to pull it up on YouTube and say, I think I just locked down a podcast episode with this dude. So I was tooting my own horn in the garage a little. That's great. So, well, Dacota Muckey, do you have anything that you want to get out there to our listeners, or maybe in 10 years, 5 bajillion people listen to this episode, who knows? But anything you want to get out there. And then I want to enter what I call the shameless plug zone, and we want you to tell us everything about how to find you on the internets and the socials and download your stuff and watch you and all that afterwards.
Yeah, for sure, man. I don't know. I just say, like, I feel like I usually vibe with people. Like, I vibe with everybody, but I think I talk like a lot of dark stuff. So it's like I'm around a lot of like post addicts and stuff all the time. So that's just kind of the zone I go down. But, you know, if you are somebody who's going through anything as simple from like a breakup to just like a tough time or feeling stuck in the same job, or maybe you are struggling with drugs or alcohol or something, you know, intense like that, suicidal thoughts even, it's like, you know, I just urge you to just like realize it's like we all have like the ability to create our own story out of all these things. So, you know, I was definitely there, and I know at least like 75% of my friends have like had horrible dark pasts. So I'm constantly surrounded by people who've like, your story is your story, and it's just like, what are you going to do with it? Like you're like the director of a movie who hasn't put an ending to it yet. So it's like, you know, what are you going to do? And you have that power. So yeah, hopefully that like resonates with somebody. I know, like for me, I mean, also like the grass is always greener. People like look at, you know, my life or like whoever else's life and think that it's so awesome, great, or whatever. And like I look at other people's lives and I'm compare myself to them. And, you know, everybody I've ever met, you know, in this scene, people that other people consider like super famous and stuff, like they're all like, they miss their kids when they're on the road and they're sad and they're like, why am I even touring right now? Like, God, like it's weird. All these people love me, but all I want to do is be home with my family. Like every single person in every walk of life, all these people that you look up to are still struggling with their own things. So it's like, you know, it's never that great on the other side. I think like just realizing that the human condition is like struggle is involved in it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to keep ranting if I don't stop. But
well, you know, you talk about in your documentary that you can watch on your website too at dakotamuckey.com is that, you know, gratitude's very important. You know, we don't often take a step back and pay gratitude, which that is, I think it's like one of the core keys to unlocking happiness is, you know, being grateful for what you do have. And that might help you pursue, you know, what you don't have, but maybe it's what you need, you know, whatever that means for you. So, yeah, that watching that, it's only about 17 minutes or so. And, that really enlightened me a bit on I think who you all are as a person to some degree, and some really, really good tidbits people can pull out of there, and as well as your passionate music. So I thank you for, you know, being the one that's out there spreading that out to people, because you touched on things there, and it's not easy to do what you're doing, and the bands that do leave families and are gone for months at a time, you know, it seems all they get all the money and the women or whatever, you know, but it's not really that easy always.
yeah, nowadays I wouldn't say, especially in this scene, not a lot of money, not a lot of women, mostly just a lot of kombucha. And it's funny, that's the last thing I'll say. Whenever I first got to Harmony Park, you know, you go to the like backstage areas for the bands and stuff, there's always like kegs of beer and as much food as you'd ever want and stuff. But when you go to Harmony Park, there's these kegs, and I was with my tour managers like, dude, they got like beer kegs over there, like let's go get some beer. And only at Harmony Park, all of the kegs are full of kombucha.
Yum.
I was like, that's actually pretty awesome.
Go figure, right? Gotta love those. Gotta love all those wooks running around underneath the oaks.
Yeah, man. Kombucha keg stands, man. That's the way we party at Harmony Park.
Let your dreads hang low. Beautiful, my friend. Well, do you want to, shall we enter the shameless plug zone and tell us your website and your socials and where to get your music and how they can get all your merch and that beautiful stuff?
Of course, yeah. Basically everything is on my website, which is dakotamuckey.com. Dakota with a C, not like the state. So DACOTA. But yeah, from there you can basically find everything. But there's Dacota Muckey podcast, which you can find on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you can find podcasts. And my merch is on there, my videos, my music, and my music is on Spotify and Apple Music. And we've been releasing one song a month for the past few months. We still got a couple songs to go, a couple months to go. There's still going to be another Sugar Shack. I don't know when this is going to come out, but the last Sugar Shack session from that time out there is going to come out on March 1st. So like a week from now ish. So still one more of those to come. And yeah, we got an album we're working on that we've been releasing all these singles to, and putting some good stuff out. I kind of slowed down on the podcast because of being in an RV with no Wi-Fi, but I currently have 4 that are finished that I haven't released because it's so hard to have a release schedule, if that makes sense, with all the music that's coming out and the Sugar Shack sessions. But a lot of podcasts will be dropping, and there's some exciting guests in there. And yeah, I think that just about covers all the shameless plugs.
Well, perfect. That was great. And this was a great episode for me just because, you know, I've seen you in action up there, and you do some beautiful work. And I'm appreciate that you allowed us to get behind the scenes of Dacota Muckey a little. And, you know, we enjoy vibing with people, and I think we're vibing, and you're going to do some really great things in your life. And I'm glad that we were able to be a very teeny part in your life that someday we can all look back on and appreciate. So I can't thank you enough for spending your time with us. And I don't know if Mrs. Catherine Jurens has anything final words, but I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So
yeah, this was awesome. Very enlightening. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for having me on. It was a beautiful conversation. It's cool to not be the one hosting the podcast. I don't know what it's like from the other side. I think, hey, honestly, I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain this is the only podcast that I've done that's not mine.
Holy smokes, I feel
pretty
super
sure,
privileged.
Like, I've done interviews and stuff, but like I'm pretty certain that's true. Yeah.
So special.
Well, I just figure you never know. So once when you released one of your videos, and I followed you for a while, but I was like, damn, I'm gonna reach out, and it worked. And now I'm trying to toy with a few other. I want to bring more of this modern, not spiritual, like this music that really can move people. You're one of them. We've known John Wayne and Weston for quite a few years. I want to get his rascally ass on here. We've had Weston on before, and we started poking around with. Are you familiar with Article Sound System?
I'm not.
Check those guys out. They just popped up on our YouTube actually when we were spinning around, and great reggae band. But anyway, so we're trying to hook up with them, and I think that'd be a great. Every so often, have a musician on here that gives such a different perspective on the world. So, thank you for lending yours to us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Weston, is that the guy that has the long dreads?
Ooh, he did.
Not anymore.
Oh, okay. So can I tell like one last quick? This would be like a last story.
Yes.
You talk about when I was like shirtless playing at all these like campfires and stuff. So when I first went to Shang, I went just like as a fan with some friends. I was like, I'm really into this Mike Love guy, and like always loved Nako, and like, let's just go to this 9 hours away, but come on, it'll be fun. So we go playing at all these fires and stuff, and this person's like, hey, follow me, like my friends would love to hear you play. So like, okay, whatever. And I go play around this fire, and these dudes are like jamming hardcore with me, like real good musicians. I was like, oh, holy fuck, like, do you guys mind if I come back here? Because this is like in the middle of the day. And they're like, yeah, come back here anytime. So then I go back there every single night and jam with this group of people. And on the last night, I'm like on Molly, and like we're all like passing the bottle of whiskey around, and we're all like, they're singing songs they've wrote. And I'm totally new to the medicine music community. Like, I don't know who anybody is. turns out it's, what did you say his name was? The dude with the dreads from John Wayne and the Pain?
Weston.
Yeah, it turns out it's Weston, it's Carl from Satsang, and like a couple other people, and like I have no clue who these people are. And yeah, so that's the only reason that anything ever happened. Like that's where it all started, because we were all playing around the fire, and then I left there, and then I messaged Carl. I was like, hey, thanks for letting me jam with you. Because then I saw them on stage. I was like, oh my God, these guys have like tons of fans. I was just jamming with that guy because I had no clue. And he wrote me that review. Uncle Joe saw the review, and then we got a slot at the festival. Anyways, that's how it all started. But that guy was there.
That is
from
beautiful.
John Wayne and the Bane.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, because Weston's become our little buddy. He even hooked our daughter up with a flute so she can start her flute journey, and that just means the world. So he's a magical elf, and he's out there helping all sorts of people.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a nice dude. I know John Wayne does a lot of cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a fan of the Thai for sure. Oh,
cool, man. Well, thank you guys so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate you guys.
Yes, thank you. Reach out anytime if you got something cooking, or I'd love to do little updates every so often with people too, and we can keep them, a little shorter just to kind of see what's up in your life now that our listeners kind of are familiar with you. And please keep in touch.
Absolutely, man.
All right. Well, thank you, and just have a great time, and please stay in touch.
You too.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Both of you guys have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. I'm always so weird about trying to end those things sometimes, but there's a part of me that doesn't want it to end. You know?
I know. It's like you're living in your childhood fantasy of getting to meet your musical idols, in a sense.
For sure, that's what it is. So hopefully we didn't have volume issues in here. I kept trying to play with the volume as they were going. This is the first time we've used Zoom. So I would turn him up and then play with us or whatever. But so I would like to end the show with the end of his documentary, because something that he said at the end of it really, really spoke to me. Honestly, it made me a little teary-eyed, and maybe it's just the crazy day I'm having, but I want to end with that, and then we'll do our typical spiel out. Does that sound good to you, my lady?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
We start out as kids with a dream. Some of us want to be firemen, some of us actors, some of us architects, and some of us follow the dream and some don't. Sometimes we fall in love and start a family, and the very dream itself changes. But for those of us who hold the same dream we had when we were young, we often lose ourselves in the work. We live in this capitalistic, Americanized way where we relentlessly give hours to the pursuit of success without ever even taking a breath of gratitude along the way. We forget that our lives on this earth are temporary. Along with everyone we meet, everything we do, every feeling we have, it's all temporary. This is truly a profound and beautiful thing. The temporary nature of our existence grants us a deadline, or perhaps a lifeline, rather. It gives us motivation to live out our passions before time condemns us. There's something very liberating about exposing one's wounds to the world. It's to allow yourself and those around you to be proud of their humanity. Because in the end, we all suffer in our own ways. Sometimes all it takes to help someone is to reveal your own darkness to them in hopes that they might not feel so alone. This is what music can be used as a tool for. When it's all said and done, I'm beyond grateful for the journey we've had and the support we've received over the many years that have passed and the many years to come. I've already lived 1,000 lives with my couple of best friends on these stages, and I'm excited to live 1,000 more. But as I begin to write this new chapter of an ever-changing story, I look back with gratitude and forward with enthusiasm. Because I know, without a doubt, that the journey has only just begun.
I'm not quite sure where all of this is going to take us, but That's the third time I've listened to that, and me too. And it hits me just a certain way, and I'm extremely grateful for what we're doing. I don't know where this is going to go, but just keep listening, keep hanging out with us, keep interacting in the group, support us. Let's do this together. I don't think I'll ever be able to put into words just how much all of this stuff means to me, and you guys supporting it along with my wife means a lot. So thank you. Thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for listening to the Positively Midwest podcast. Our hope is to inspire, engage each other's thoughts, and leave you with some great advice. Be sure to join our Facebook group and follow us on Instagram at Positively Midwest Podcast. Make sure you like, comment, share, and screenshot our podcast with all your cool friends. Every little bit helps. We are on most all major platforms, and you can stream it on our website at positivelymidwest.com. Thank you, and as always, please always stay positive.